Hi and welcome to The Courageous Collective, the podcast where we celebrate diverse women who dare to do things differently. I'm Rupa Baradva, a copywriter and communication specialist. I work with women entrepreneurs to help them get clear on their brand messaging, and I help them become more visible to their target customers using PR.
And I'm Vardeep Edwards, founder of The Branding Fox, a design consultancy that supports women in business with their branding and design needs. After working in corporate roles, we both took the leap into self-employment and created our own businesses where our skills and experience could really shine. But something we both noticed was the lack of women that looked like us at events, on speaker panels, and in the media.
Which is why we created the Courageous Collective podcast. This is our platform to celebrate and champion diverse women who are smashing it in their businesses. In each episode, we speak to a female founder about the story behind their business. We explore their inspirations, the challenges they faced and how they've dealt with them. And we talk about what they're yet to achieve.
Welcome to the Courageous Collective and enjoy today's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Courageous Collective. We're back with a themed episode, and today we're taking a closer look at branding. We hear about branding all the time, but what is it? And why, as founders, is branding important? Do you need a personal brand and a business brand, or does it not matter? All important questions, and who better to join us and help us get some answers than my podcast partner in crime and branding expert, Vardeep Edwards. Vardeep is the founder of The Branding Fox. She works with ambitious entrepreneurs to create standout brands and has almost 20 years experience of being self-employed. In that time, she's built up an incredible portfolio. Branding can be a minefield, whether you're starting a new business or have been running one for quite some time. It's important to get it right. So thank you for helping us demystify brand, Vardeep. Let's begin with an easy one today. So hello, by the way, and what does brand mean?
Yep, hi. Well, thank you for the intro. It always sounds great when somebody else says it. Yes, so branding. So the way I like to describe it is to imagine your brand as your home. So if you think about the foundations of your home, these are the foundations of your brand. And some of the things that would include will be your mission, your vision, your purpose, which is your why behind what you're doing, your values, which is how you behave and act as that brand, and also your differentiator. So what makes you unique and different from other options. And then in terms of styling your home, so imagine your carpets, your wallpapers, the paint colors you choose. These are then how you style your brand and what a lot of other people see. So some of these will be your fonts, your colors, the tone of voice that you use, the images, the message that you put out, your website, marketing materials, and this all helps to have that outward appearance of your brand. And then I like to describe the logo separately as your front door of your home, because to me, the logo is a mark. It's a memorable mark of your visual part of your brand identity. And it gets sort of bundled up a little bit as being the brand, but actually the logo is one part of your brand. But it's a memorable mark. It then becomes this identifier that people will remember about your brand. And then in terms of how people feel in your home, so you've put all these elements together of your brand, what you're about, what you stand for, what your values are, and then you're communicating that with styling that brand. When you invite people into your home, how they feel about it is then your branding. And it takes time to get to that stage because you want more people to come to the same conclusion about your brand, and that takes time and consistency. And it's when enough people have that same impression of your brand, are you said to have a brand? That's why a lot of the time the bigger brands get all the mentions, because they've been around for some of them hundreds of years. Because of that, they've built up that equity and that memorability and recognizability about what their brand is and needs to be.
Mm-hmm. I love the analogy of using a home for what a brand means, because now you've said that, it makes so much sense. And I think as somebody who isn't a branding specialist or a designer or somebody who kind of is focused, I guess, on the visual side of things, I think sometimes the assumption with brand is that brand equals logo. And actually, from what you've just explained, it's very much not the case. And actually, it's, yes, part of the overall brand, but it isn't the thing driving the brand necessarily. So I think that's a really, really good point for our listeners there as well, because I think I've learned quite a lot just in that first question. So thank you. We are recording this episode, which will be going out just in time for International Women's Day. So that's the 8th of March. And as a podcast which supports women of colour, we really wanted to spend this episode helping our listeners understand the benefits of what a strong brand is. So would you be able to share with us, for a creative business owner, what are the benefits of having a strong brand, particularly as a woman?
So I think having a strong brand really helps you to stand out, because if you are clear about what your position is in the market, what makes you different, and what you want people to know about you, that's going to help carve out a space for you. And that can only then just be built on and grown over time with your business. So I think that's a massive, massive benefit. And particularly for women, I think from my experience and also my own personal experience, I do think some women tend to hold themselves back and aren't as visible, don't put themselves out there, maybe won't invest in branding. And I think actually branding is going to help give you that edge. It's an element of your building your business that has this emotional connection, and it's something that is hard to replicate for a start, but also it helps you to get under the skin and really connect with your ideal clients. Also, by investing in your brand, it shows that you're taking yourself and your business seriously. Therefore, it has a knock-on effect with the end user and other people who also then take you seriously. And I think as women, and again, I'm talking from personal experience, I'm a mum, I work from home, and to avoid that negative or amateurish kind of connotation that might come with working from home with a family, having a brand, having a strong brand, and having one that you've invested in and grown with you will really help to elevate that potential connotation with other people as well. And it helps to make you look professional, because there are lots of DIY options out there. There's a lot you can do yourself and, maybe cobble bits together, but it shows at some point. So to have that consistency and continuity just gives you that professional edge. And it also gives you confidence, because I think once you are confident behind what your brand is about and who you are and how you want to be seen, it shows up in how you market yourself, how you communicate, how you talk about what you do, and it helps you to be more visible because of it as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I guess brand is so important, because it runs through everything. And as you said, feeling a bit more put together, feeling more professional in front of, potential clients is exactly what we're all striving for. I think when you are, like you said, working from home, working for yourself, you're already facing that uphill battle to kind of prove that you are the real deal, that you are able to provide the services or goods that you're selling. And actually a brand can give you that, I guess, all round important kind of gloss on top of everything else that you would probably be providing to a client as well. Mm-hmm. So I 100% agree with that. I think it's such an important thing. And would you see branding, because it is a big investment, isn't mm-hmm. it? So would you see that as being an important priority for somebody maybe starting out a business?
Absolutely. I think it's got a place regardless of what stage of the journey you're at. It's something that needs to evolve and grow with you as you grow your business, because if you're thinking long term, so you're thinking about where that business might be in 10, 15, 20 years time, it's important then to think about investing in your brand over that time as well, and try and shape something and create some sort of a legacy. And it also makes business sense, because businesses or other investors are more likely to invest in a brand that's been thought about or has carved a specific niche, or, you know, has a really clear message or offering around it. So it has lots of benefits.
Brilliant. So a question that you may get asked quite a lot, particularly from people who are sole traders: what's the difference between a business and personal brand? And as business owners, should we have both? Or is it really not that important?
So I think personal brands are really important these days. And I would go so far as to say that if you're online and you're running your own business, you've got a personal brand. With the rise of digital use, online space and social media networks, it's key to be using those networks for a start, even as business founders. But once you start using them, you are building a brand around yourself on a personal level. So I would go so far as to say that, yes, absolutely, you should be working on your personal brand as well as your business brand. People are going to buy into people, and that is part of the personal brand that you're creating. And a really good example of this is Oprah Winfrey. She's a famous personal brand. Everybody, well, many people around the world will know who she is, and they will understand, have some idea of what she's about, what's important to her, what she stands for. And that is the essence of her personal brand, separate to what she does in any businesses or anything else that she puts out in terms of products, services, you know, shows and what have you. Her personal brand the values will show up in her personal brand, and it's those values and attributes that can then feed into her business brands. And that's where you think about some of the brand partnerships. So depending on what's important to you as a personal brand will dictate what specific partnerships are going to be right for you as well, because they should be aligned, because otherwise it can be seen as being inauthentic. And so in terms of then any business brands that say, so Oprah Winfrey puts out, there's no doubt that there's going to be an overlap in terms of her personal brand and business brand, because they've got to be aligned, and they will have some sort of similar elements, but they are essentially separate entities of themselves, and they can be treated as a separate brand, but it's fed from her personal brand. I hope that kind of makes sense. And
Yeah. And I think you see that as well online when you if we look at Instagram influencers, for example, and somebody that you particularly follow, and then you see them working with a brand which is like completely against what they stand for, or it is quite jarring, isn't it? And actually sometimes you find yourself turning off from those people because you don't have that authenticity.
Yes.
And brand, as we've heard in the last 10-15 minutes, brand is so important to get it right, because you do come across inauthentic and therefore lose that connection with people. So yeah, that's been really helpful. What would you say are the key ingredients of a strong brand?
So I think having the clarity around what makes you different is a really key factor. It's not about being better than your competitors, because sometimes your competitors might be an online service or somebody, a business founder, doing that particular thing themselves. So it's about really understanding what your space is and what makes you unique and different, and having clarity around that is then able to drive your message and for others to understand what it is that you do as well and why you're different. So then that helps with why people should choose you and not the next person or the next service, for example, or app even these days. It also makes it easy for them to understand. So the easier you can make your business, product, service, what you do, to understand and also to use as well, puts you in a really strong position, because then people know how to refer you for a start, and they also know to whom, because they know who's going to be right for you and who's going to be a good fit. And that's quite a good element of a strong brand. I also think being distinctive which probably overlaps a little bit with being that unique and having clarity around what you do, but also being memorable and recognizable as well. You want people to be able to see your brand and go, I know who that is, that's so-and-so, they do this. And that kind of ties a bit in with visual identity, as well as perhaps, logo design as well, but also your messaging and kind of your values and your purpose as well should all kind of sort of be subliminally feeding into this.
I don't know if you get this a lot, but I often get this particularly with female founded businesses, so business owners, and they will say to me, oh, there's nothing, distinctive about my business, or, I just haven't got a story to tell, or, blah, blah, a competitor talks about this because this is what happened in their life, and I just don't have the same story. I get that a lot, and I'm sure you do too. How do you help people like that? Because that's not really the case, is it? I always find something. There's always some nugget of interest in the whole, makeup of this person. How do you help somebody find that distinctive quality or uniqueness? Because that's obviously such a big part of the whole branding process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing here is that it's really hard to be objective on ourselves. And also, we are then looking at other people and seeing what they're doing, and we think we've got to do something similar or that they've got something better than us. So there's a bit of a combination of both things, I think, going on. So I think it's really important to get some outside help, because working with a branding expert, and I know this from working with my clients, they don't see what you see. But also it's finding the little nuggets that are going to help build that brand. And sometimes that just helps with an outside pair of eyes, but also asking the right questions. So, and it's about exploring what that brand could be, because there's different ways of building a brand and everybody's got their own approach. But I think sometimes you've got to kind of look for what those key elements are and what's gonna connect with their target audience as well. So it's tricky. It's tricky to be objective on your own brand. So it helps to get the outside help and get the right insights and questions and exploration around that as well. But then it's also about not looking at what other people are doing. Yes, it's really important to look at your competitors and what your space is within that market, for example, because you will be compared to other providers in your client's eyes. But it's looking at it with a view of thinking, okay, but what makes me me? What makes me unique? What makes me different? What am I going to do that's different? And that is going to help my clients as well. And it's really honing in on that. So it's really drawing out that differentiator, that thing that only you can do. And I think that's the key. And that's the key exercise of branding.
Yeah, and there's some really good points that have come out there. The questions, I think, when you ask questions, they give you that extra layer of information you probably wouldn't find yourself. So the fact that you are asking your clients questions, and it's not just yes or no questions, these are open-ended questions. It sounds so simple when we say it, but actually questions can then unlock so much more and take you down all sorts of paths which you probably weren't expecting. So definitely think that's a brilliant approach to go down. And also we all can fall into that trap of looking, online and getting sucked into what our competitors are doing and thinking, well, that's the only way to do business. But actually seeing that as one way, and actually what else can you do? What else can you bring? Remembering all your experiences and skills and all the rest of it really does make a difference. So we've already spoken about the fact that some of our listeners might be sole traders, maybe they're a service-based business like a coach, for example, and they're trading as themselves. So, for example, myself, I trade as myself. How would you suggest I, or someone like me, builds a brand?
So I think this really depends on what stage you're at with your business, because if you're just starting out, I would probably say a full in-depth brand strategy is going to be a bit overwhelming. And you might not necessarily have the answers you need to make that an effective exercise for you at that stage. But branding, I believe is a long term, and it's an ever evolving exercise as part of building a business. So there will always be some elements that can be done regardless of what stage you're at. So in terms of if you're just starting out, I think, it's key to kind of experiment a little bit as well when you're starting out, because you might not be completely clear on what your service, product or offering is at that stage, or even your target audience. And you might be literally really early on. And I think in those instances, it's probably important to just draw on what you're about and what interests you, what are your values, what's important to you, who are the people you would like to work with. And that can start building a bit of a loose foundation to at least move on from at a later stage. And then once you've been in business for a few years and you've got a clearer idea of what's important to you, how you want to work, why you're doing what you're doing, and who you want to work with, you can get a clearer idea of who that person is. Then I think you can start to kind of do a bit of an audit and assess of where you're at or where you have been with your brand and your business. And I keep sort of using brand and business sometimes interchangeably, because I think it needs to feed into your business strategy. It's not a separate exercise to any of the other activities that you're going to be doing in your business. So it should feed into your marketing, your PR, your comms, as well as your business strategy. And so I think when you're growing, then you can really start to look at defining what that brand is. So you can actually, this is a really good time to actually delve into your brand strategy and actually dig into what you want your brand to be known for and how to shape it in terms of what your mission is, what your long-term goals are, who is that target audience, what is your USP, and then look at that to be consistent as well. So, once you've defined what your brand is, then it's about being consistent with that message and that brand identity so that it gets into the minds of the people that you need to get into the minds of.
Brilliant. And I think I love the point that you made around, the brand strategy feeds into the business strategy, because you are asking yourself those questions. They're very similar questions, in fact, about your audience and your goals and, how you want to grow the business, where you want to take the business, etc. So actually it does all mesh in together. And I remember we did an exercise a year ago, and, some of the things that we were talking about then, I had to get a handle on where my business was going in order to then give you the information to go ahead and create the brand. So it really does work hand in hand with your business goals, strategy, etc. So you've spoken a lot about connection and how brand can help you connect with your audience. Tell me a bit more about how we can build on this as business founders.
Yeah, so I think this is where some of the understanding about how branding can help you probably gets a little bit lost, because it is it is intangible. It's really hard to measure. It's hard to know what that return on investment is compared to spending on ads, for example, and seeing actual hard numbers. But one of the quotes I really like is that it's 95% of our buying decisions are based in our subconscious, and then we back it up by logic. And the subconscious is where the brands sit. And you can see this with diehard fans of some of the bigger brands. Apple, I'm an Apple fan. I'm not going to buy anything else but Apple now. They've got that instilled in me. I'm their key target audience. You can see that in the Harley Davidson fans as well. They are diehard. It's all about the brand for them. Nike, I see it with my children, for example. They've really cornered that market. And you can tell yourself all sorts of reasons for why you're buying those brands or into their brands. But when you're looking at the logic of it, there's not a huge amount of difference probably between them and other examples. So that's where the branding and the emotional connection with your target audience really sits. And again, branding is long term. So it does take time to build that up. And that's where consistency helps with that as well, with the trust building with that. So you are who you say you are. People get that experience from what you say you're about, and it has this sort of self-fulfilling, circle where it just kind of feeds into itself. Therefore, it's helping to build that brand and that authenticity again. But it's also about really understanding your audience, because when you think about Apple, for example, you know they're hitting the pain points of their target audience. They're going to be design-led. They're going to be creatives generally. They like their products to be user-friendly, intuitive, easy access, easy to set up, easy to connect with other devices, and they're beautiful. It's something that you enjoy looking at and using, and it's really getting under the skin of that target audience. So this goes beyond just the demographics of age and location and what have you. That does all help, but it's really getting to know that target audience, and that's how you get to build on that emotional connection as well, because you want your target audience to go, they really understand me, they know me, and they should feel like you know them.
Yeah, and that's so important, isn't it? As business owners, having your audience trust you. And you mentioned that. Talk to me a bit more about building trust. So how can we build trust with our audience or potential customers?
Yeah, so this feeds probably into a little bit into marketing as well, because there's the well-known phrase of know, like, and trust. But so it's not just about being visible. It's not just about people liking you. It's also that trust factor. It's knowing that they can rely on you, knowing that you're going to solve their problem, knowing that you've put them in the center of what you're building in terms of your business and what you're providing and solutions that you're offering. You've thought about them and what they need. And it's also showing up in the sense that you're doing what you say you're going to be doing. So I suppose an example of this is perhaps, greenwashing, for example, in some of the health type of brands. So if a brand has been seen to be saying one thing but doing another, it's just going to create that mistrust and inauthenticity. So you've got to show up with the intention of what you're saying you're showing up for, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. And I think it's so important. And it does lead back to values, because if you're saying one thing and then doing another thing, that again isn't going to make somebody necessarily trust you, let alone buy from you. So I think definitely goes hand in hand. Also, just going back to the emotional connections with brands or of brands, whether a brand is one that you like or don't like, it's that feeling you get from that brand regardless. Yep. And so I have particular brands I will shop with or buy from because I love them. Like Topshop was a classic example. I'm still holding on to a pair of jeans which are falling apart, but they're original Topshop jeans that I bought from the Oxford Street store, and I remember it vividly, and I have that emotional connection with that brand. But then if you give me something from Primark, I probably wouldn't value it as much, and it probably wouldn't last as long equally. But it's about finding that spark with your audience, isn't it? I love that. So what should business founders avoid when they are working on their brand? Is there anything that they simply, shouldn't do, complete no-nos?
So I think here is to just make that distinction about what a brand is, because quite often people will assume that their brand is their logo design, for example, and it's not at all. Logo, as I explained earlier, is one small part. And that's okay to think that, because in fact I didn't really understand what branding was until only a few years ago, really. So I think when some business owners, when they're starting out, they will DIY their brand, but in that I mean perhaps they might do their own logo, or perhaps use a free or a cheap online option to create that. And I'm going in the camp of to not do that, really, because I think, unfortunately, some of these online places that you can get those sort of resources from will be used by several other business owners. And if the whole point of your brand is to stand out, be distinctive and be unique, you're not going to get that from going to an online free logo app maker. So that's something that I would probably go, is just hold off for that until you've got a bit of money to invest behind getting it designed for you. But it's also about thinking about what's relevant for you in your stage of the business. So like earlier we said, if you're just starting out, you probably don't need to go full in depth on what your brand strategy is about. So really just think about what is your minimum viable options at this stage until you're at a stage where you can really sort of, grow and take it forward and know where you're going with your business and your brand. Also, and just remember that it's a long-term process. So it's not a case of, okay, I've worked on my brand now, I've got the guidelines and I've outlined all these different areas of what my brand is about, and that's it. It then needs to have that consistency. You need to be able to communicate it, put it out there with your brand, with your stakeholders, with your team members, with your audience, and grow it as well. So have your brand set out, but make sure that you're living that brand, and it evolves, and it's able to evolve and adapt with you as you grow.
I love that. Great advice there, Vardeep. What about, we are lucky. There are lots and lots of great brands out there, and there are quite a lot of female-founded brands. Can you give us an example of one that you particularly think is fantastic? What makes it great?
Okay, so I've got 3 examples here. So one is Mowgli Restaurants, although I think it's Mowgli Street Food. And I suppose it's a bit of a personal like for the brand. I'm from that background. I enjoy Indian street food. It's probably my favourite type of Indian food to eat. So there is a bit of nostalgia there. So I think she's really captured that with who she's trying to target. And she's also done that with the way her restaurants look as well. I really get that vibe of being taken back to this other place. So I think she's done that very well. And also her whole ethos around her brand is helping others, helping community, giving back to the community. That's part of her mission. And I can really see that in what she's doing. I think they help, I want to say, a local business or a charity with each of their restaurants. And I know she's just opened up a school in India. And it's this whole kind of, the actions that they're doing as a business feeds back into their brand and what their brand is about. And all it does is strengthen and reinforces their brand as well. So I think that's a really great example. There's also Wooka, which are the period pants. And again, they really understood their customer and target audience and identifying this gap in the market. But also their message is really clear. You know what it's about. You know why they're doing what they're doing. And they're memorable. I remember that name. And they're identifiable. So when they pop up on my feed, I recognise it without even having to read who it is. So I think that's just a really, really great example as well. And then the other example I was going to share was Holly Tucker. So she champions small businesses, particularly creative businesses. She's very dedicated, and you can just see that she is mission-led. She's doing what she's saying and what she says she'll do. So that, again, that creates that trust and authenticity behind what she's doing. So you do follow her, you do trust her, you do believe her when she says she's going to do something. And all 3 examples have got really strong brand stories. So this is a great example where their personal brands have helped their business brands as well, and vice versa. So I just think they tick a lot of boxes in terms of building a great brand.
Yeah, and 3 excellent women to follow on social media. I know Holly does amazing things on social. Obviously, Mowgli's founder, Nisha Kotona, speaks a lot about service and, giving back. And as you said, that's very much part of the thread of the brand. Also love her restaurants. Yeah. And it is literally like you are being transported into a different realm almost, with the swinging seats and the beautiful fairy lights everywhere twinkling away, and the food is just incredible. So another big plug for Mowgli Restaurants there. So you have given us so much great advice, Vardeep. If our listeners wanted to maybe do some research themselves, maybe do a bit more reading, can you recommend any resources that they can look up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have got a brand audit guide, which we can drop in the notes afterwards. And that's a very short workbook where I've just outlined some questions so you can really assess where your brand is and where you want to take it. But it gives you a starting point of something that business founders can do themselves. There's also Enterprise Nation, which has tons of free resources, as well as a free event every year. I just went to one in January, and they talk about lots of different aspects of running a business, including branding as well. So there's lots of good resources on there. There's also the Federation of Small Businesses, again, quite similar to Enterprise Nation. They are probably a bit more localized in certain areas, but again, they've got really good resources and regular webinars as well. And then, of course, there's Holly Tucker's Conversation of Inspiration podcast. It's perfect for creative business owners. And she covers, so probably not so much on branding, perhaps, but there's a lot around running creative businesses, being inspired, which I think we do need as creative business owners as well. So it's kind of reading a little bit around some of the things that you need to do to help inspire you and perhaps take that next step.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Vardeep. You've really, I think, opened my eyes, and I'm sure you've helped our listeners learn a lot more about branding. If you would like to follow Vardeep, you can follow her at The Branding Fox on Instagram. She shares tons of great advice, as you've heard. And yeah, do download her audit guide. I think it would be very helpful. So that's it for this episode. Thank you for joining us. Do share your feedback on our Instagram. It's at _courageous_collective. And we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. The Courageous Collective is created by Rupa Baradva and Vardeep Edwards. We really appreciate your feedback, so please like, share and follow us. Please also subscribe to receive an alert for our next episode.
You can find out where to follow us on social media in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a future guest, please do get in touch. Thanks and see you soon.